I go back and forth when I think about what is the prosecution going to do, and are they going to ask for jail or not? And I say that because one of the things I've done the most in my career is sat with groups of prosecutors and gone over what do we think we should recommend for sentence in a particular case. And it's a hard thing to do, right? It's not an easy it's not an easy thing to determine, and a lot goes into the decision making. And I could see, for example, different people on the team having different opinions, right? There were 4 or 5 lawyers on this team. Alvin Bragg will have the ultimate say. And they will take lots of things into consideration. They'll look at, for the first thing they do is they start with what is the range of possibilities. And here the range gives the judge a lot of discretion. It could be each count carries a sentence of 1 1/3 to 4 years, and that's at the top end. Some of them, well, they can all run back to back to back. They call that consecutive, to make a total of 20 years at the top instead of the top being 4 years, because it's an e-felony, so 20 is the max. They could run them all, string them all together. And so the way 1 1/3 to 4 works means that he would be sentenced to, he'd have to serve 1 1/3 years after a 1 1/3, I guess 1 year and 3 months, he would be eligible for release. But the jail or the prison can hold him up to 4 years, depending on how he does while he's in. With, I think, 7/8, he does 7/8 of the time, with an eighth shaved off for good time. And so that's what it would be on the top end of what you're looking at. And at the bottom end, they could do anything. They could do a conditional discharge, which means essentially nothing other than certain conditions like community service, or stay out of trouble, or don't try to steal any other elections. That literally, you can make a condition anything. You could make it truly, I think I've said this before. I had one once where a defendant was sentenced to military service because that's what he wanted. He wanted to go into the military, and said, make that my sentence so that I actually follow through with it. That's why I want you to be lenient and not put me in jail, so I can go on with my life and do something productive. And you have a lot of latitude. They could put him on probation. He could be fined. I think a fine is the least likely thing they would recommend, because he's a billionaire, or certainly at least has access to a lot of money, because he fundraises hundreds of millions of dollars off of these cases. So I would say that's not really punishment for someone like him. What would be punishment and a deterrent? And so they're going to be looking at all those things. If I were them, I probably wouldn't even want probation supervision, because that's just, what's he going to do? Report to a kiosk? And, that's just sort of strange, especially given who he is and what he might be doing next year. So I think what really the big question they're thinking about is whether it's going to be, whether they're going to recommend some form of incarceration. And I lean towards yes. I think they will recommend it. Because that's a true punishment here. The other true punishment, I would say, would be a conditional discharge with lots of community service, but the type of community service where you pick up trash on the subway. That would be, I think, a huge punishment that could be appropriate. But jail could take a lot of forms, right? It doesn't have to be 1 1/3 to 4. It could be weekends. They could make them serve weekends in jail. So you show up on sometimes it's like Saturday morning, and you spend the day in jail, and you spend the night Saturday night, and you spend all day Sunday, and you're released Sunday afternoon. Make them do a month of weekends. Or they could do home confinement. Those are the types of things that I think they're thinking about. And I've said this before, if his name wasn't Donald John Trump, they would recommend the maximum. I mean, this is a guy who has, he was arrested, and then he had 3 other pending, currently open indictments in both state and federal court. I mean, he actually stole an election. the jury had to find beyond a reasonable doubt that that this was about stealing the election. This was about election interference, and the fact that I'm sure they will argue, because they argued in summation, that Donald Trump won this election very narrowly in 3 swing states by 80,000 votes. That's what made the difference. 80,000 people, 80,000 votes. That's what made him win the 2016 election and made him the 45th president of the United States. And what if this was the information that, if this had come out, this would have put the people in the swing states over the edge into the other camp? This was like MAGA cult insanity, where you've got these diehard, I don't care what he does. He could be adjudicated a rapist, which he is. He could be a convicted felon, which he is. This was that time. This was still game show host, or whatever he was, reality show or beauty pageant show host, whatever shows he had. Clown Trump, with the weird hair, who had that Access Hollywood tape come out, and people were like, "What the heck is going on here?" And you heard people at the trial testify that was crushing, right? That was a very difficult time, and they were desperate for this not to come out. And so that could have made the difference. So I say all that because I can't imagine, I can make the argument, and I think the prosecutors will ultimately, because if you're going to do it with a straight face and you're going to treat them like any other defendant, there is no more serious Class E felony that exists. There just isn't. This is one of it's the most serious Class E felony I've ever certainly seen. I've never seen one where the defendant and then committed this crime. He wrote these checks. He did all this while he was the 45th president of the United States of America. I mean, to me, it's atrocious. He deserves prison. And if he wasn't Donald Trump, let's just be honest, they would recommend prison. And so the question is whether they will recommend that he be treated like everybody else, or will they take something else into consideration? And that's something, but I would argue that's the judge's job. That let the prosecution argue what they're going to argue, let the defense say, whatever they're going to say, and it's up to the judge to strike the balance. So that's where I land in terms of the sentence.